Welcome back, Warp Fiends. This week on Warhammer Math, we're looking at the rest of the Phoenix Lords, including my new favorite, Lykis. So last week, we looked at three of the Phoenix Lords. We looked at Ozerman, we looked at Fuegan, we looked at Janezar. This week, we're going to be getting to the rest, including my new favorites, Lykis and Subscribus. All jokes aside, today we're going to be looking at the rest of the Phoenix Lords. I am super excited about them. As a reminder of the premise, we're going to take each of these Phoenix Lords, pair them with a minimum size bodyguard unit, and then have them shoot everything they've got, and then charge into close combat. You're not always going to do this, but this way we can compare their shooting damage and their melee damage so we can see what they're capable of. Before we get started, I want to get the noobs up to speed. My name's Blake, and I've written a custom program that takes an attacking unit and a defending unit and then simulates the attack between them a million times so that we can see the entire distribution of results. Let's get started. Also, all of these squads are not going to be running with buffs, so if you want to see all of the buffs available to them and how that would affect their squads, check out my last video. We get to start out with my brand new favorite Phoenix Lord, the one that I've been looking forward to for literally decades at this point, which of course is Lykis, which is one of the most gorgeous models I think I've ever seen. I mean, maybe I'm biased.
It really is amazing.
Oh my goodness, she looks awesome. Definitely buying one of these.
Are there only 6 Phoenix Lords?
Yeah, there are only 6 Phoenix Lords, in spite of the fact that I think there are 8, technically 9 warrior types. If we include
because there's no Phoenix Lord for what, a couple like Shining Spears or something?
Yeah, there's no Phoenix Lord for Shining Spears, and there was a Phoenix Lord for the Striking Scorpions, but they removed it from the Codex because the Striking Scorpion Phoenix Lord, I think from the lore, sort of disappeared recently, and a lot of people are expecting that he's going to come back, probably in the next edition. But
he's probably gone filming Alien versus Predator.
Exactly. He's off filming another Predator movie, yeah. Apparently in the lore for Eldar, if all of the Phoenix Lords get together, that sort of like signals the beginning of the end times. So,
oh, geez.
Yeah, so I wonder if they left him out for that reason. Although, again, there are at least one more, maybe 2 other Phoenix Lords that have never made an appearance. So I don't know if they actually have a place in the lore. But check this out.
Lykis is your favorite.
I have always wanted the Warp Spiders to have a Phoenix Lord, and I am not disappointed. So here's what Lykis can do. She has a typical profile for a Phoenix Lord. Moves 12, toughness 3, 2 up save, 5 wounds, leadership 6. She's got some pretty mean weapons. At range, we have the Blood Twin.
Wait, are you saying that 12-inch move is typical for a Phoenix Lord?
No, 12-inch move is not typical for the Phoenix Lord.
Other than movement. Okay, sorry. That makes sense then. Continue.
Yeah. So, Lykis has the Blood Twain, which ignores cover, torrent, it's twin-linked, shoots 24 inches, you get die 6 plus 3 shots, strength 6, AP 2, damage 1. And she's got a really, really nice ability that goes with that, the Whispering Web. In your shooting phase, after this model is shot, select one enemy unit hit by one or more of those attacks until the end of the turn. Each time a friendly Eldari model makes an attack that targets that unit, an unmodified hit roll of 5 scores a critical hit. So,
lower the threshold of criticals down to 5s for the whole rest of the army against that unit.
Yeah, and I mean, she can use it for her own squad because at least the Exarch and herself have lethal hits, so they can take advantage of that. But as you've seen from our last game, that is also a fantastic buffing ability for other units like the Dire Avengers or honestly just anything else. Which is pretty nuts because you can just kind of hand out sustained hits and lethal hits in most of these detachments for various units.
Doesn't the Avatar have sustained die 3?
Yeah, totally.
So if he got 5s and 6s worth sustained die 3, that would be very annoying. But he only gets one shot?
He only gets one attack.
He just throws...
And I can't
maybe not the best.
Yeah, and I can't just like auto plug in a 6 like I did before the Codex. Yeah, again, I think that's totally fair, but that does take some of the pep out of his step, so to speak. The other thing that's interesting is that these guys are usually not a melee aspect, but so much of her ability comes from the melee because she's got 2 different melee weapons. The Spider's Fangs, which give you lethal hits, 5 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 4, AP 2, damage 1. And the Weaver Render, which also has lethal hits, 5 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 6, AP 2, damage 2. So she gets 10 pretty deadly attacks, which can really buff the output of that squad in melee. And it's a squad that, before she came out, I probably would not have used in melee unless I had no other choice. So.
And they're very often ending up in really treacherous locations. They zip around the board and sort of flame attack people, right?
Yeah, exactly. Although it's way more horrifying because their weapons in the lore are supposed to basically be like shooting out these like webs that are razor sharp and wrap around stuff and then just constrict, which is pretty awful.
Like a monofilament. It's like the filament that cut through the ship in the 3-body problem.
Exactly. That's kind of what I imagine.
Yeah. Terrifying. Extremely scary. Worst nightmare.
And then to pair with all those melee abilities, she also has Empiric Ambush. I'm probably mispronouncing this. That's okay. Basically what it says is her squad can flicker jump now, so move 24 inches across the board, and then still get the opportunity to charge.
What the what?
So she
doubly turns them into a close combat unit.
She turns them into a close combat unit. So let's go ahead and take a look at her bodyguard, the Warp Spiders. And again, for these simulations, we're going to take 5 of them. We're just assuming minimum size squads because this is mostly about the Phoenix Lords. They all get a bunch of Death Spinners, which are basically flamers, strength 4, AP 1, damage 1. And then the Exarch has a few choices. Before, you could load her out with extra Death Spinners, but especially if you're taking her with Lykis, you now have the option...
turning them into a close combat unit?
Yeah, so you can essentially take away all of her ranged attacks and replace it with the Power Blade Array, which makes her look super like a spider because it's just like 4 blade arms that are just coming out of her back. Love it.
Ooh.
10 attacks, hitting on 3s, strength 4, AP 2, damage 1.
It conjures images of General Grievous. Isn't General Grievous the dude who had 4 lightsabers in Star Wars?
Yeah, that's the one. Very Grievous vibes.
Yeah, that's what I see. Yeah.
And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, the thing about the Warp Spiders is they move 12 inches, but you can choose to have them flicker jump. And if you do that, then they get to move 24 inches instead. And then Lykis allows them to move 24 inches in charge. The downside is before you just had to roll 1 dice for the squad. And if you got a 1, you just had to lose a model. Now you have to roll a dice for every model in this squad. So if you're taking 6 of them, you're rolling 6 dice, and every one is one of them lost to the warp, which in my opinion makes this the most horrifying aspect to join. Because I mean, Eldar, they're all taking their gems so that they can like preserve their souls from Slanesh. If you're a white warp spider, after like 3-ish jumps, you just get lost in the warp somewhere, just never to be seen again.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's brutal. Now wait, to clarify, I would like to be more specific about the flicker jump. It does what? Plus 12 to move or times 2 to move, or what the heck is the explicit rule for flicker jump?
The explicit rule is you change their move characteristic to 24 inches. In your movement phase, when this unit makes a normal move, it can make a flicker jump. Mm-hmm.
So the only opportunity cost is that somebody might get lost in the warp. It's not an advance. It's just a get lots of movement. Damn.
And then every aspect, of course, gets their shrine tokens, which you can use in a number of ways. I'm not actually going to talk about them in this video. But once per game, you can just take a hit or a wound roll and just change it to a 6. But again, in, for instance, the aspect host, you're probably going to be feeding that into stratagems and stuff. So this is not something you're going to be using every turn. I feel like I would save this for exactly the right moment. So basically, with this Warp Spider squad, what you have is you've got 4 guys with Death Spinners, so 4 guys with Flamers, and then you have the Exarch with the Power Blade Array, so for just a bunch of close combat attacks. If I wasn't going with Lykis, if the squad was running solo, I probably wouldn't give them any close combat weapons at all. I would probably choose the Spinneret Rifle for the Exarch instead, just give her extra shooting. But again, the point is the Phoenix Lords right now, so we'll just move on with that for now. Now, first target I wanted to throw them into were some legionaries, just for your benefit. No, actually, this wasn't just about you.
It's fine. I don't even care. I don't even care.
So
I don't care.
I do want to specify we have not thrown any stratagems into the squad. The point of this video is to show you what these guys can do at base, and then you can layer on a whole bunch of other buffs. And I talked about that in my last video. If you want to see all those available buffs, go ahead and check out that one. Link is down below or up above. I'm not quite sure at this moment. Link is somewhere. Check it out. So this is essentially their base damage, if you will.
They do between 16 and 21 damage.
Yeah, and they're killing between 7 and 10 Space Marine bodies. So that's like,
wow,
98, almost 99% chance to wipe a 5-man squad, 32% chance to wipe a full 10-man squad of Marines.
Is this just in shooting, or is this shooting, charge in, and then fight?
Oh, yeah, again. So the premise for all of these is we're taking the Phoenix Lords, we're adding in their minimum bodyguard unit, and then because all of the Phoenix Lords have both really good shooting and really good close combat, even though sometimes I wouldn't go with the close combat, the premise is we're going to put them up close, we're going to shoot everything, and then we're going to charge in and see what they can do in close combat. I'm not saying this is what you would do in game.
For this video, so this video for all these simulations, it's shoot and fight.
It's shoot and fight. Even if you wouldn't normally do that, I didn't want to run a million simulations, and I still wanted to give everyone a taste of what they could do in both places. So this was a way to do one simulation and give you sort of like a general idea of what the Phoenix Lord and her unit are capable of. So again, we can see that actually, I'm just going to go ahead and show you the breakdown. And again, there are a million ways that you can slice this up, but one way you could look at it is if you did both, 60% of that damage would be in melee. That's assuming that Lykis is shooting into the squad that you're attacking, so Lykis and the Exarch will both be getting lethal hits on 5s. You might take that shooting and put it elsewhere, but, you know, just for completeness. So 60% of this damage is done in melee, and then if you compare the squad's output to the Phoenix Lord's output, Lykis herself is doing 57% of the damage. So Lykis is doing a lot of work here in addition to all of the abilities that she brings to the squad.
And this in total, 60% of the damage is done in melee, and 50% of the total damage was done by the Phoenix Lord.
57% of the total damage was done by the Phoenix Lord.
Right.
Yeah. So that's including both. And I just wanted to look at the buffs a little bit, obviously because they have torrent weapons and all of the buffs for all these aspect warriors are at range. You would never give them lethal or sustained because they don't do anything for this squad.
Right.
So you can't buff them.
Which is something that you could have given them with a shrine token or something?
Well, again, there are a bunch of stratagems in a bunch of the detachments that allow you to just hand out either sustained hits or lethal hits. That's probably the most common way to buff most of these units is you can hand out sustained or lethal hits, which is one of the reasons why I'm going to talk about them. I will also mention, once again, take a look at my last video, because all these squads are 6-person squads, you can have them jumping out of falcons to give them reroll wounds, which... Anything hitting on a 3 gets a 33% buff. Anything hitting on a 2 is going to get a 16.7% buff. So out of a Falcon, all these things get even meaner. But again, Eldar are one of those factions where it really, really relies heavily on layering your buffs and supporting your units in various ways. So this is just their base damage. So she can very comfortably go after smaller squads of things and just wipe them and stay safe. I know a lot of people are using her just as an alpha strike. Given her damage output, unless you have a really good reason or a squad you really want to eliminate, I personally would be disinclined to use her that way just because the squad is fairly expensive, like over 200 points. But it is an option. You can totally get her to attack something in your opponent's deployment zone on turn 1 without very much difficulty.
Damn, yeah, frickin' missile with that.
So they really, really like legionary bodies. I also noticed that custodies have been getting a lot of love lately. So
Why can't they be space marine bodies?
They will be. I'm just trying to switch it up.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, if we're talking in general jargon, nobody calls them legionary bodies. They call them space marine bodies.
I call them legionary bodies. Okay, so we're going to throw them into some custodian guard, which are basically toughness 6 terminators. So if you throw them
and they
into
have a couple toughness 6 weapons in there. I know that the Lykis has a toughness 6 weapon in close combat, and I think the blades were also toughness 6.
No,
or strength 6. I mean,
they were strength 4, but they're also twin linked, and you're going to get lethals, so they're still going to wound a lot of the time, like 2/3 of the time ish. So you're going to get a lot of wounds through, but they're going to kill between 2 and 4 custodian guards, or 2 to 4 Terminators. Actually, they would do very slightly better against the Terminators because of that Strength 6 weapon that you mentioned, but somewhere in there. So 2 to 4 of them. And again, the breakdown ended up looking really similar, where in melee, they're doing 63% of their damage, and Lykis herself is doing 61% of that damage. So against custodians, that's a 34% chance to wipe a 4-man squad and a 9-ish% chance to wipe a 5-man squad, because you can take them either way.
wow, that that really sort of disappeared. The possibility disappeared quick, sort of tapered fast. 34% to kill 4 and 9% to kill 5.
Well,
I guess it makes sense because each body is so chonky. But wow.
Also, if you just consider the fact that they have lethal hits, this spread is fairly narrow. You got 9 to 13 damage. All those lethal hits make their attacks pretty consistent, which can be really useful because you know what you're going to get when you go in. So they could probably wipe what's left of a Terminator squad or what's left of a Custodian squad, but I probably wouldn't send them into a full squad because the reprisals would probably be bad. Again, Eldar are just fragile.
Yeah, and Custodies enjoy close combat.
Yeah, they enjoy everything.
They're good at all the things.
All right, so I feel like you're not going to throw them into tanks or anything heavier, although you could. I didn't feel like that was their main target. So let's go ahead and move on to another Phoenix Lord. Another one that I've liked for a very long time, but whose rules have changed quite a bit. And that's Baharroth. So I'm definitely going to invite some conversation on this because these last 2 Phoenix Lords, I'm still trying to figure out how best to use them. Also, before we go on, I just want to remind y'all, comment for the comment gods!
Like us and subscribe us. It sounds like us.
Please like us! And subscribe us, very important. Baharroth and the Swooping Hawks, they mostly want to be at range. They are mostly a shooting aspect. At range, you got the Fury of the Tempest, which has lethal hits, 24 inches, 4 attacks hitting on 2, strength 6, AP 1, damage 2. Pretty good Marine killer profile. And even though they are primarily a ranged aspect, Baharroth also has a pretty sweet melee weapon in the Shining Blade, which is 6 attacks, hitting on 2, strength 5, AP 2, damage 2. And again, with all these Phoenix Lords, what you're really looking for are these abilities. So it used to be that Baharroth would give your Swooping Hawks move, shoot, move, but now Baharroth has this Cloud Strider ability, same name, different ability, which essentially says that at the end of your opponent's turn, if they're not in engagement range, then they can just be removed and put back in strategic reserve.
Oh, so they have the uppy downy. That's what Tabletop Titans has officially made forever into uppy downy. That's what they call that, right? It's
uppy downy, and then when they downy, they can also downy within 6 inches instead of 9, which...
Oh my god.
Which could be useful, but then they're not eligible to declare a charge if they use that.
I still think that's way more reasonable than the old... Who were the Space Marine floaty dudes that got to come in within 3 inches?
Oh, the Inceptors.
The Ancestors.
Yeah.
Those guys...
You would.
I thought that was such a lame ability.
I'm really glad that they changed this because I feel like within 3 inches was just too much.
Yeah.
Within 6, I feel like they found the happy medium. I'm pretty happy with that. That seems fair to me.
Yeah, who wouldn't be happy with 6 inches?
Now, the other thing that Baharroth offers is the Cry of the Wind, which is each time this model is set up on the battlefield until the end of the turn, all of his unsuccessful hit rolls score a critical hit. So essentially, Baharroth gets critical 2-ups. So everything is a lethal hit.
That is such bullcrap.
4 attacks.
That's so Eldar.
You only get 4 attacks.
That's so Eldar.
It's all about using them in just the right way, in just the right time, in just the right place.
Yeah, okay.
All right, let's take a look at the Swooping Hawks that he's going to go with. Swooping Hawks are going to be loaded out with a bunch of las blasters. I definitely got some heat in the comments for calling things laser guns and laser blasters. Las blasters. I'm working on this. I really am.
It's all written, I guess. We don't watch the animations, so we don't have the canonized Imperial Guard guy saying it to us in our mind. It's always been lays to us. As a kid, it was lays like the chips, and it just stuck forever.
It's like when you read a book and then somebody else like mentions the name of a character, and you're like, "Who the hell is that?" Oh, I've never thought of it that way. That's not what it sounds like in my head.
Oh my God! Whenever Mike and I both read the Aragon series, and every time he says any character or city's name, I'm like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Sorry. Anyway, I swear.
No, I feel that. All right.
He's like Hammond Jammer. I'm like, what? Jormungandr?
So the Swooping Hawks mostly like to get out volume fire. Each one of them has the Las Blaster, which has lethal hits. But each one gets 4 attacks, hitting on 3s, strength 4, AP 0, damage 1. And then the Exarch has a few options now. It used to be that you would always take the Exarch with the Hawk's Talon, which is 2 attacks, hitting on 3s, strength 5, AP 2, damage 2. Because I'm going with Baharroth, and because Baharroth has damage 2 weapons, I would select the Hawk's Talon in Baharroth's squad, just because I like to have weapon profiles that mostly like the same targets. If I was setting them up on their own, though, without Baharroth support, I'd probably put the scatter laser onto the squad, because then you just get more volume fire, and that's mostly what they like to do.
Well, that's interesting. I feel like I'm recognizing a bit of a pattern. I recognize this pattern has but 2 data points thus far in this presentation, but it seems like both of these squads had their role changed as a result of being joined to the Phoenix Lord. So you're switching out their war gear options to fit them to a new role. They're not the same unit anymore.
Well, previously I would always use the Hawk's Talon anyway. It's just now they have the option to take the scatter laser, whereas I'm pretty sure before they did not. Mine definitely didn't have scatter lasers.
Okay.
Yeah, so essentially all these squads, they gave the Exarchs in particular more weapon options. So they have more versatility. Although again, in my opinion, the Aspect Warriors are about doing one thing well. I want my whole squad to be doing the same thing very efficiently. I don't really like to split up their abilities. I know it gives them more flexibility, but I would rather have a bunch of tools that are just right for that particular job. Although I know that's treacherous, because then when you lose one, then you lose that tool. But
right.
The other thing that the Swooping Hawks have, which I would probably normally not be able to use, is they have the Grenade Pack Flyover, which is once per turn in your movement phase, when this unit is set up on the battlefield or ends a normal advance or fallback move, it can use this ability. If it does, select one enemy unit within 8 inches invisible to the unit, and then for every member of the squad, you roll a dice. Every 4-up, you're going to do a mortal wound. Well, to a maximum of 6. So essentially, you get... Yeah, so basically they get free 8-inch grenades. But if you do that, you're not allowed to use the grenade stratagem on the same squad until the end of the turn. You cannot target this unit. Yeah, so you can't use grenade stratagem and this on the same squad, but you basically just get free grenades. But you have to be within 8 on this unit that really wants to stay further away, in my opinion. So you can add that in, but I have a hard time imagining that I would use this most of the time until the end game. End game, this ends up being an amazing ability.
Yeah, dude. If they popped in somewhere, grenaded one unit, actually used the grenade stratagem on another unit, and then laid waste with some ammo, these dudes are just spitting out damage.
Yeah, but they mostly like to take out chaff. At least that's how they like to run without Baharroth. So let's pick a couple of targets. Before, I use them primarily to take care of chaff and take care of secondaries or actions. So let's see how they do into a cultist mob. I just felt like...
You're such a bully. It's totally not bothering me at all. I can
tell. So,
all right.
Again, I know this is not an optimal target for Baharroth because of all the damage to attacks, but if you were to drop in and then you were to shoot all their weapons and then charge in, again, I have not factored in the grenades, you're going to end up killing somewhere between 16 and 20 cultists, doing somewhere between 23 and 29 damage. So that gives you...
Now, you did say for all of these simulations that you're both shooting and charging. Is that still true?
That's still true. So you can see here that Baharroth in close combat is doing like 7.9 damage. And again, they're damage to attack, so that's like 4 dead cultists there. And then the rest of the squad is going to do like 2 3/4 kills with all their close combat weapons, which would normally be nothing, but since into cultists, it's actually at least something.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
Holy crap. 16 to 20 models killed. You're going to wipe out the biggest squad.
Yeah,
the
but
biggest
again,
squad of cultists you can make.
that does assume you're charging, and actually, because of all of Baharroth's damage, 59% of this damage was done in shooting, which means if you're just shooting, you're probably going to get more like half these numbers, a little better than half these numbers. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. I feel like this is not an entirely fair comparison just because I would be using them just to shoot until the end game, and then I probably would be using their melee ability. So it really, I think, depends where you are in the course of the game, whether or not that melee is going to be worth it for you. And again,
right. If you're trading out your swooping cocks in order to get it, then probably not worth it.
Exactly.
But if there's nothing that's got guns trained, that could be worth it.
Mm-hmm. Also, notice this. The Phoenix Lord, Baharroth, is doing 55% of the damage. Again, a lot of that damage in this particular case is going to be overkill. But check this out. If you give the squad sustained hits, most of the squad is going to get a 22% boost to their output. Since Baharroth gets crits on 2s, that's going to be an 83% increase to Baharroth's damage. Baharroth likes sustained hits.
He likes sustained and he likes lethals.
Well, they already have lethals, so that's probably not useful.
Oh, yeah, okay, no, you're right. Damn.
You could have them jumping out of a falcon,
2s.
which I would have said before is something I would never do. But again, in our game, I had some banshees come out of a falcon, and then towards the end game, I started having my swooping hawks popping in and out of the falcon so that they could get reroll wounds. I didn't think of that until that actual game, but that was actually a pretty sweet use of that falcon that had already essentially spent its squad. So that is a possibility.
Yeah.
You're just not going to do that at the beginning of the game.
That was a nice little backup plan that you formed there. That actually worked out all right.
That was definitely on the fly.
I mean, you still
did not
lost,
consider
if I
that.
recall, right?
I
You
think
still
I
lost there, right?
I don't remember if I won or lost that game. I remember it was really close.
I'm pretty sure I won that game.
It came down to the very end. One way, it was a
No, you
very
didn't stand a
satisfying
chance.
game.
No, that's not true. I actually thought for most of the game that I was screwed. But I came out on top. The orcs made smash of the dumb elf.
Hell yeah. Oh, man. All those
Elf
flash
jam.
kits.
Okay.
Oh, my goodness. I was so not expecting them to do that much damage.
Yeah, dude, the flash kits are pretty mean, especially because that was with the tactical brigade, the detachment. So I got to give them +1 to hit, and then with their mech, they were re-rolling 1s. It was pretty sweet. It was really sweet, actually.
We may have to return to that idea in the future. Wink.
I would love to. Yeah, I'd love to see a bit more of the flash kits and what they can do.
Mm-hmm. All right. So again, cultists are not. If you just have swooping hawks, cultists are a great target. But if you are taking Baharroth, you probably want to go into something a little harder. Oh, right. I forgot about this. Demons are so hot right now that I decided I wanted to go into a demon target. So I wanted to take a look at some bloodletters, which are toughness 4, have a 5 up invulnerable save, and still just 1 wound. And in this case, you're going to kill between 10 and 13 of them, giving you a 75% chance to kill the bloodletter squad. And I know they can be pretty mean. I know that this is a fairly similar target to the cultists, except, toughness 4 is a breakpoint for them, and having the save also definitely makes a difference. In this case, again, you can see in shooting, they're doing 60% of their damage, and Baharroth is still doing 57% of that damage. Sustained hits still looking really, really good for them. It's not quite as much of a buff for Baharroth as it was before, just because you also have to factor in the lethal hits, but it's still a really significant boost to give them those sustained hits. So I think that's something really worth looking at. Okay.
Yeah, those are both pretty squishy targets, though. Let's get something a little tougher.
All right, this time I actually went into marine bodies, and they're not even legionaries.
See, you used it. You said they're marine bodies.
I just wanted to have some variety, even though I know that they are effectively the same thing. Anyway,
the spiky gaze.
I feel like marines are a fantastic target because of all the damage to attacks. And we're going to kill somewhere between 5 and 7 marines. Again, this is without buffs. If you start adding in sustained hits, I think your odds of killing 10-man squads of marines starts going up pretty quickly. But against marines, 53% of this damage is done in shooting. So if you're not charging in, you're going to be losing like half of this. So be aware.
Wow, okay.
Mm-hmm. In this case, the Phoenix Lord is doing 67% of the damage. Basically, 2/3 of the damage is being done by Baharroth. Although that is split between ranged and melee, so we do have to take that into consideration.
Because those are damage to attacks that Baharroth is putting in there, so suddenly his damage output in melee is way more efficient.
Absolutely. In fact, let's see, the Shining Blade does an average of 5.3 damage, so Baharroth's going to be killing 2 or 3 marines by himself with that sword.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, but the other thing that tells me is that if you're looking at their damage output, they're mostly contributing to killing squads. They are, for the most part, not reliably wiping marine squads. And this is why I think I need people's help, because this is one that I have not tried playing yet, because I'm still not 100% sure the best way to run Baharroth, given these numbers. Because before, I always use the Swooping Hawks as just added pressure, either just getting rid of chaff or just adding in some extra shots to something else. But if you're investing all the points in Baharroth, if you're taking this 200-point unit, you need this to be efficient. So I'm still trying to figure out the best way to run him, and I'm especially interested because I'm seeing that some of the top tournament lists recently have taken Baharroth, which means some people have figured out how to use him effectively. I'm just not sure what that is yet. So I really have some experimenting to do here. I'm really glad that I have an old Baharroth model, so I do get the opportunity to kind of play around with him, but that's going to take some experimenting, for sure.
If I may, I might gently nudge you towards putting a finer point on it. What is it? Is it because he's not explicitly capable of really doing ranged or melee or transforming his unit? What is the nature of your uncertainty with Baharroth?
The nature of my uncertainty is that if almost half of this damage is coming from melee, then that means if I'm taking this squad, which is going to be uppy-downying all the time, does not really want to be charged, because that would suck, then they're really only killing like 2, 3, 4 Space Marine bodies at a time. If you buff them with Sustained, it might be more like 4, 5, 6 Space Marine bodies at a time. But I feel like in order to get some angles on that, I just feel like the squad is going to have to be exposed because they lost their move, shoot, move, which means you drop them down, you shoot at something, and then that's where you are. So, I mean, there is at least one detachment that offers move, shoot, move. I think it's the basic Warhost detachment. But anywhere else, if you don't kill your target, they're going to be exposed after this. And they're squishy.
So I'm tempted to draw a comparison with the Warp Talons, who can go in. If they completely kill a unit, then they can disappear. But the nature of the difference is, because especially if you were able to leverage the get in real close, throw that grenade ability for the unit, then shoot, and then charge in, and then chop crap to pieces, that like they could be, you know, through multi-phases really trying to make sure that they eliminate a single unit and then go back into reserves. But they can't do reserves until the end of your opponent's turn, or what? When do they go back for their uppy?
Not until the end of your opponent's turn, so they get a whole turn to try and deal with them.
So yes, you could throw them in, get them close enough to use the 8-inch free grenades and shoot and do all that, but then wherever they land, they're stuck there.
Yeah.
So you could really only do that to super eliminate a unit that is already reaching far to like the periphery of the map, and where afterwards probably a single turn is not enough to get there again. That does sound like a really narrow window you're trying to make work.
Although, I mean, it's just not as reliable as I would like, because you're doing 6.8 damage. As you mentioned, you can throw in the grenades where you're likely to get another 3 damage, so that's like 10 damage. And then if you give them sustained hits, you're giving them another, like, I don't know, something like a third. Actually, it might even be more like 50% increase in their damage output. So, I mean, you are going to be able to get like 12 or 13 wounds on Marine squads, but if it's a whole squad, like if it was 5 Hellblasters, I'd be really nervous. I really would. And in fact, because these bodies are so squishy, even if they were just intercessors, I would be slightly nervous because they can just get gunned down like that. If you don't manage to completely wipe the squad, they're kind of in trouble.
You can't be throwing them after a 10-man Space Marine squad, that's for sure. But a 5-man doesn't sound that bad if you're likely to do 13-ish wounds.
Well, I guess if you combine that with the fact that they're great utility pieces, having the uppy downy and the ability to do close combat later on in the game, maybe this is just a unit that gets more and more valuable as the game goes on. Because early on, you can just have them chipping in here and there on things that are really safe, and then maybe they really shine in the end game. Maybe that's the point.
Because at that point, it's less likely that having thrown them so far abroad, they're not going to be shootable by as many things afterward, is kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, and just more things are going to be isolated. Once like half of the pieces are removed, you might be able to get them in on and kill things that are just not supported anymore. Whereas in the early game, that's not really a possibility.
Also, I can imagine that it might be really useful to throw them at a 5-man squad of, I don't know, let's say a heavy weapons crew, and kill 4 out of 5 Space Marines, leave one guy left who's not likely to punch back really hard. They effectively get to be covered from at least fire elsewhere because they could close in on and possibly pinch a remaining 5th Space Marine, especially if they're not good at close combat.
Yeah, and actually now that you mention it, and again, I feel like this would be like more mid-game or late game, they could mount a pretty effective assault against a home field objective if it's not very well supported.
Yeah, because they could blast off, get super far being on wings, and effectively take themselves out of harm's way by still being in close combat range of hopefully something mostly depleted.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't want to kill a whole unit with them.
Huh. Yeah, this is something I'm going to have to play with. Honestly, if you have some experience with this, please throw your suggestions in the comment, because this is definitely something that I want to experiment with, but I'm still trying to figure out. Speaking of which, we really need to find some faction experts. Because, I mean, we know the factions that we play and the ones that our friends play, but there are a lot of factions that we still don't know about. So, we're kind of toying with the idea of finding some experts on various factions so that we can be a little bit more authoritative on them. So if you're interested, let us know. We'd be interested. There is one more Phoenix Lord. It is the one that I am honestly kind of the chilliest about, which is Maugan Ra, which is also a really cool model, but I can't figure out how he's supposed to be used. Because
Why?
Here's why. Because here's what he's got. He again has pretty decent melee, pretty similar to the other ones we've seen. 5 attacks hitting on 2, strength 6, AP 2, damage 2. But his ranged weapon, the Mugatar, great name for a weapon, has devastating wounds. Has devastating wounds, ignores cover, only shoots 36 inches, 6 attacks hitting on 2, strength 7, AP 2, damage 2. All right, let me tell you about the rest of this. After he shoots at something...
I'm going to call him Maugan.
Right.
I'm going to call him Maugan from Samurai Champloo. Maugan Ra. Sorry, go ahead. Special rules. Tell me. Don't listen to me. I'm shutting up now.
I love that anime. But he can force something to take a battle shock test at -1, which is good situationally, but also has the Harvester of Souls. So basically, if there's a bunch of units clustered up, then one in 3 of them will suffer die 3 mortal wounds.
Wow.
But think about that. That's like, if there are 3 units all clustered up and you shoot one, then one of them is going to suffer another just 2 mortal wounds from shrapnel. I don't know. First of all, units usually aren't clustered up like that so much. And
Because they all have to be within 3 inches of each other?
Well, they all have to be within 3 inches of your target unit. And then they have a 1 in 3 chance of suffering mortal wounds. But it only goes off on a 5. So,
well, I have to say the imagery that it conjures is really cool. This dude with a giant Grim Reaper gun, sniper rifle, fucking just like boom, boom. Everyone's like, ah, that's pretty cool. All right, so but no, I can see why that's hard to count on.
But here's my problem.
You can't really leverage that.
Is that Mugen's bodyguard unit are the Dark Reapers. Who all have these Reaper launchers, which shoot 48 inches. And they get, mostly you're going to be using the Starshot profile. They get 1 attack, hitting on 3s, strength 10, AP 2, damage 3. Which just seems like they want to go into a completely different target to me. You know?
Wait, how far does Mugen's gun shoot?
36 inches. It doesn't even shoot as far as the rest of the squad.
Okay, but not that far off. A 12-inch difference. It's not like 18 and 48. That would be annoying.
But it's also strength 7 and damage 2.
So it does seem like, yeah, he really would prefer elite infantry and clustered units.
And he's just so much more expensive than the rest of the squad. Because the Dire Reapers, you take 5 of them, and they're only 90 points. They're actually a really cheap shooting unit.
Holy crap.
I don't remember exactly what his cost is, but he's like 110, 120, somewhere in that range. And it just, I don't know, that seems so weird to me. So, the Dark Reapers, they mostly have these Reaper launchers, which do have kind of an anti-infantry profile. They can also get 2 attacks hitting on 3, strength 5, AP 2, damage 1. But for the most part, I feel like it's fairly rare that you're going to want to go with that profile unless you're shooting into, 1 wound infantry, which is not really who they want to be shooting into. And then the Exarch can take a few different options. I see a lot of people taking the Tempest Launcher, which gives them some indirect fire options. I feel like I would prefer to put a missile launcher on him, which is very much like what the rest of the Reapers have, but it's just damage D6 instead of damage 3, which again is only marginally better than 3 attacks anyway. And it's swingier, so I'm not even 100% sure I'd want to go that way, to be completely honest. They do ignore cover, and they ignore all modifiers to the ballistic skill and to the hit roll. So that can be nice.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, so, AP2 and ignores cover is kind of like AP3 in most cases if you're shooting 48 inches.
And they have the aspect shrine tokens, so can be granted lethal or sustained or whatever all the other stuff they can do.
Well, it gives them an auto 6, but then again, in the aspect host, they can discard one of those and then get both sustained and lethals with the stratagem, which really bumps up their efficiency. So,
Okay. It doesn't even seem like they're really conveying abilities to one another, Maugan and the Dark Reapers. Their abilities aren't really that useful for one another.
yeah, I just don't feel like they synergize very well.
I wonder if it would be better to run Maugan on his own lonely only.
Oh, and take over like a Death Jester role.
Yeah, where he just, the Death Jester. I don't even want to talk about that bastard. Yeah, but like maybe it's like, why even put them together then?
Oh, I'll have to consider that. I'm always afraid to run non-lone operative characters alone, but I mean, he is relatively tanky with a 2-up save and a 4-up invuln. Maybe that is the way to go. I just feel like he's kind of expensive for what he does, and I almost feel like I'd rather take a Death Jester or some other character instead, but maybe I'll think about that.
And the annoying thing is you don't actually attach characters to a unit until you're mustering the army at the beginning of a game. So if somebody in a tournament has Maugan in their list and Dark Reapers, you cannot know based on what you see there whether or not he was connected to them.
That's a good point. Again, if you've been running him solo, please let us know, because that actually does seem like a reasonable option.
Someone tell us. But anyway, let's see what their output is anyway, because I'm sure you still simulated a few targets, right?
Yeah. I do want to say again, I feel like this is weird because I did charge them in because, Maugan has the Mugatar and he's pretty decent in close combat.
It sounds like a cow playing a musical instrument.
I know. I really don't want to throw the Dark Reapers into close combat, but I did just so y'all can see. So first of all, we're going to go into some legionary bodies.
Yeah. These guys have really had a rough day.
So if we take a look at this, they're going to... I did again use the Starshot profile, so the damage 3 profile. They're going to kill between 5 and 8 Space Marines, but you can see that about 2 of those Space Marines were killed in close combat. So at range, it's really more like 3 to 6.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. And you got a 81% chance to kill a 5-man squad if you're charging in. And you've got a 5.5% chance to kill a 10-man squad if you're charging in. Although, even after charging in, 71% of their damage was done at range. So again, I'm just like, why would I even bother throwing them into close combat?
71%, and we still have not yet reached what would be a sort of optimal target for them. Space Marine bodies are a bit piddly for Dark Reapers, right?
Well, I mean, Maugan loves it because he's got damage 2 attacks, but the rest of them have
strength 7.
Yeah.
Right.
And the rest of them are damage 3 and strength 10, so they're wounding them on 2s, but you're going to get overkill. So, I mean, this is 10 damage at range. It's like, so the rest of the Reapers are doing like 5-ish damage, maybe 6. That's like 1 or 2 dead Marines. And then Maugan's killing another 2 or 3 Marines at range.
Mugatar.
Yeah. So they both like Sustained. Sustained gives them 25% for the squad, 20% for Maugan himself. Lethals doesn't help very much in this case because they're wounding the Space Marines mostly, wounding them on 2s with Maugan. Nope. 3s with Maugan and 2s with the rest of the squad.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right.
So lethals doesn't really help under this target. I feel like the rest of the squad wants to go into vehicles. That's the way that I would want to use them. So I decided, let's going to go ahead and throw them into a Gladiator Lancer. And if we do that, we're doing between 5 and 11 damage. So a 22% chance to kill this Gladiator, in spite of the fact that 2 of those damage were done in close combat. So
2 damage. Yeah, this is when we're definitely charging in with the Dark Reapers.
So really more like an 11% chance to kill a Gladiator. Because the Mugatar is only doing 2.7 damage. It's just not doing it doesn't really want to go into vehicles very much.
No. it would probably prefer to be shot into an aura buffing character model.
Yeah. However,
Because that way all the dudes are nearby.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good. So again, most of their damage is done in shooting. Maugan's doing like half of that damage. I feel like their close combat is really not worth it. I feel guilty because I don't feel like this is a good representation of the Dark Reapers, so I wanted to do one more thing. I know this is about the Phoenix Lords, but I just thought to myself, the Dark Reapers can do so much more damage if we take a full squad of them. So if we take 10, it's only 180 points. If we put them in Aspect Host, then they get to re-roll their hit rolls of 1, which is just a flat 17-ish% increase. If you play Preternatural Precision, then they're going to get sustained and lethal hits if you use their token, or their Shrine token. And if they're popping out of the way that I would run these guys, even though their damage is not insane, they're not eliminating things, I would run them popping in and out of a Wave Serpent so that they're safe, so that they get to do this damage over and over and over and over again. So if we put them in Aspect Host, and they're wounding on 4s, so if we're still going into a Gladiator Lancer, then they're going to get 16% buff from the detachment, 25% buff from Stained, 25% buff from the lethals. That actually stacks up to a 75% increase in their damage output against something like a Gladiator Lancer. And if they're in the Warhost detachment, you can give them Sustained for another 25% increase. So I feel like there are a lot of ways to buff this squad, which make them a lot more damaging. So if we do all that...
And which don't require Maugan Ra.
And which do not require Maugan Ra. So we're going to take a 10-man squad in Aspect Host with Sustained and Lethals, and now they're still doing between 9 and 15 damage with an average of just about 12. Giving them just over a 50% chance to kill the Gladiator tank in one go, and then if you run them like this, they get to pop back into the Wave Serpent, and they are totally safe. Well, almost totally safe.
Wait, a Wave Serpent can hold 10 dudes?
Absolutely can't. Not the Falcon. The Wave Serpent.
Oh, that's why I got confused. Also, somebody in that squad has not a 3 damage weapon. Is that because there were die 6s in there?
Oh, it's because the rest of the squad has these damage 3 weapons, but the Exarch has the missile launcher, which is die 6 damage. So you can see like all these big spikes are from the or from the 3 damage weapons.
Oh, from all the 3 damage weapons.
All this weird stuff down here is because of the missile launcher.
Okay, I was about to say, someone in there's got a non-multiple of 3 happening. That's a fun graph. I like that.
I agree. I really like this graph. I also want to point out, if you did not give them any buffs, they would only be doing about 6.5 damage, which still looks a little rough. But again, the point is you get to do this turn after turn after turn after turn to try and make up their points value. So they're not wiping squads by themselves, but they are doing consistent damage. Which is,
however, it is probable that your Wave Serpent is visible to the Gladiator Lancer, so you better be friggin' careful.
That is true, and you can have him scoot back after he gets shot, but he does have to take 1 shot before he does that. So.
Well, that could be bad. Okay. Well, yeah, that seems like the Dark Reapers are still super useful. Also, unreasonably cheap. 90 points for 5 las cannons, we determine is the correct. 90 points for 5 las cannons is just stupid. I'm jelly.
Strength 10, 3 damage, but yes. Before we end this, though, I did want to ask, just because I asked last week, do you know what my favorite Aspect Warrior is?
Yes. Your favorite aspect. Wow. Your favorite Aspect Warrior is I know it's not Banshees. That one's mine. I know it's not Swooping Hawks. I think it's not Warp Spiders. It might be Warp Spiders.
Good
What
guess.
is it?
It's the Striking Scorpions. I've just been obsessed with them since I was a kid.
Son of a gun. You just, I'm a bad brother.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add that in. So, yeah.
Do you know what my favorite orc unit is?
What's your favorite orc unit?
Guess.
Knobs? No, it's Goskull Thraka.
Okay. No, it's Bilbo Wagons. Okay.
Bilbo
Anyway.
Wagons. All right, guys. So that's all 6 current Phoenix Lords. I'm really looking forward to Karandra's coming back, but I guess we'll have to see on that one. I'm still trying to figure out how to run these guys. So if you have any suggestions on the best or the most interesting way to run them, I would love to hear about it in the comments. Remember, damage is good, but fun is optimal. Until next time, Warp Fiends, have a good time.
Thank you for watching another episode of Warhammer Math.
For the Emperor!
Did you complete your homework from last week?
I had homework? Oh, God. This is giving me flashbacks.
I'm so sorry. I'm just being a dick. Okay.
Wait. Okay.
Yeah,
I really
there's-
didn't have homework, right?
No, there really wasn't
Okay.
homework. I'm
Wow, you
sorry.
for real just gave me like trauma. I felt it reemerge.
I'm just
nope.
seeing like half of all of my students' faces for my entire career just like look up blankly, like, oh, there's homework.
Oh my God.